όχι μόνο που δεν είναι δίκαιο. Το ίδιο ήταν.
Ναι, αλλά δεν είχε εκτυπωθεί αυτό.
Εκτύπωση μόνο πίσω.
Εγώ. Αφού δεν έδωσα εκτύπωση. Και πότε έγινε αυτό. Μα σήμερα μου το στείλανε. Ποια άλλη φορά. Α, θα με βγάλει τρελή. Δεν έχουν ανοίξει ακόμα αυτοί. Πόσο. Δεν τρέχει να διαβάσω. Έλα Γιώργο μου, χρόνια πολλά. Να είναι καλά το παιδάκι μας. Τα ίδια φτιάχνω. Εσείς τι κάνετε. Τι εννοείς, τώρα. Ωχ, μες στη ζέστη, τα καημένοι που τραβάνε. Μίλα κανονική. Και με αντίδραση και με γκρίνια από... Εντάξει, τώρα εγώ τις είπα, μην τους πιέσει, θα φύγουν κάποια στιγμή. Ναι, τι, τέλος πάντων. Α, ναι. Ναι, τι, είναι δυνατόν, δεν θα το μάθετε. Πού να έρθεις τώρα, πού να πας. Θα πας, έτσι. Καλά, εντάξει, έχεις το καλό ότι το αυτοκίνητο είναι κλιματιζόμενο, γιατί έχει φοβερή ζέστη. Θα πάτε στην κηδεία και... Ναι, να μην φάτε όλη τη ζέστη και να γυρίσετε μετά νύχτα. Θέλει προσοχή πάντως, Γιώργο μου. Πάντα θέλει προσοχή. Το ξέρεις, ναι. Ο Αποστόλης είναι στη δουλειά. Α, ναι. Οκ. Έλα, καρδιά μου. Σε ξύπνησε ή έχεις ξυπνήσει. Α, πας για δουλειά. Α, μάλιστα. Πρέπει να κάνουμε επανάληψη. Καλά. Ναι, δεν είναι πήγον. Θα μπω κι εγώ αργότερα να δω τι γίνεται, αν έχουν... Ναι, 10 επαναλήψεις δεν είναι και τόσο πολλές. Ναι, καλά, θα το δούμε. Χρόνια πολλά, αγάπη μου, χρόνια πολλά. Χρόνια πολλά από το Θανάση, από το Μπάρι. Εδώ είμαστε και οι τρεις.
Δεν έχουμε άλλον εδώ.
Δεν έχουμε άλλον εδώ. Άκουσες, έλα. Να είσαι καλά, αγάπη μου, και μόλις ματιάσεις κάτι που το θες πολύ, θα μου το πεις. Εντάξει, έγινε. Άντε, φιλάκι. Γεια. Άλλον Απόστολο έχουμε. Αποστολία. Είναι η κυρία Καλή από κάτω. Δεν θυμάμαι. Και τι λες, κυρία Ζωσαφώνου, να πρωτοκολληθεί, να ενημερωθούν οι επιθετικές περιβάλλοντες. Όχι.
Acuérdate que si hay ñ, ya estés con el tema. Si hay acento, también.
check it after, huh? So this-
can I change my background?
In what Teams?
No, Zoom. Background and filters. That's how video filters was how your man turned into a cat. I'm not a cat. I'm not a cat. I was like, what the hell are these? And then I was like, oh, it's a man, I'm not a cat. Okay, this is the one I choose. Okay. Hi, Pia. Hi, everyone, and welcome to our webinar this morning. This is the third webinar in the Strike Programs series of webinars. So I'm just going to give a few minutes, just maybe 2 minutes for the last of our attendees to arrive. I can see that we have a good few people online. We're expecting about 60 people today. I think we're probably going to wait just maybe 2 minutes just to allow people to get themselves together. The chat function is open, so please feel free to use the chat, and I'll speak again in about 2 minutes. Okay. Hey everyone, I think we'll get started properly. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Thanks, Guillaume. That's brilliant. So, oh, sorry, I'm after changing this now. Okay, so welcome everyone to the third webinar in our Strike program series of webinars. So my name is Yvonne Ryan and I'm from the University of Limerick, and our speakers today are going to be Mario Pellegrino and Mick Henry from the Environmental Protection Agency in Ireland. So on behalf of the Strike Project team, I'd like to welcome you to our third webinar, and thank you for attending, and thanks so much to our speakers for generously sharing their expertise with us. As I mentioned, my name is Yvonne Ryan, and together with Colin Fitzpatrick, we coordinate the Strike programme from the University of Limerick in Ireland. So just firstly, I'd like to draw your attention to some just general housekeeping advice. This webinar will be recorded, and this is to facilitate those of us that get interrupted or have to leave for whatever reason to replay the session and to not miss out. If we could mute our microphones, that would be greatly appreciated. And the chat function is open, so feel free to submit any questions and comments as the presentations progress. So the Strike programme is stronger training and increased knowledge for better enforcement against waste and mercury. So we're 5 full partners: University of Limerick, the S-Cycle team, Unitarian German Police University, and the Dutch National Forensic Institute. And we're lucky to have wonderful associate partners that have joined us on the programme as well. So the German Customs Authority, Dublin City Council, District of Lower Bavaria in Germany, the Basel Conventional Regional Centre in Slovakia, the African Institute, the Waste Management Department of the Ministry of Environment and Physical Planning in Macedonia. And we also have an extensive high-level advisory board, and all details of this are available on our website. The project started in February 2020, and it's for 24 months. And our geographical scope includes the EU, CE and Balkan region, and some of the selected African countries. So very wide geographical scope, which has made this a fascinating project. So the objectives of Strike are to further enhance operational activities and capacities of authorities involved in addressing illegal waste, illegal trade and management of problematic waste streams. Our focus is on e-waste, end-of-life vehicles, batteries, and waste mercury and mercury-added products. So as you can see, it's quite an extensive scope, and has been absolutely fascinating to see the results of our surveys and questionnaires that were conducted last year. The project builds upon the recommendations and outcomes and legacy of CWIT.com Waste and the Waste Force project. So I'm sure many of you would be familiar with those projects. When Waste Force had just ended a month ago with a really amazing final conference, and I would urge you to look that up online. It's for those of you that may have missed it, it's a fantastic resource. I'm providing a satellite view here of the work that is ongoing in the Strike project. So we had previous webinar sessions that went into much more details on the findings and the outcomes of the strategic risk analysis. So essentially data were gathered from over 54 respondents across the EU, the Balkan region and Africa. So we got a very rich database and insight into what was happening on the ground in each of these countries. So we had in-depth interviews and reviews of best practice and enforcement strategies and planning.
Can we have tortilla for lunch?
Yeah, Borita.
Okay, someone might
Que
to mute their microphone there. I wonder, Guillaume, can we do that remotely?
Yes, I will do it.
Thank you. This also could be my house at times, so not to worry. So we have 6 more webinars planned for from August until October, November, that kind of time frame. And we'll detail more and more of the findings and outcomes of Strike. So today's webinar looks at the impact of COVID-19, because obviously when we started the project, shortly afterwards, the world was plunged into this crisis. So we had some findings relating to COVID-19 and some interesting insights into what countries were doing. But I think the best way to find out about this is to actually speak to people on the ground and let them share their experiences with their own voice. So Strike really is focusing on capacity building and a shared vision of combating waste and crime and protecting the environment. And it's about creating that collaborative space and sharing robust and proven methods and technologies. So I've listed the website there. Please keep in touch, and you can see the upcoming events, the further webinars, and then the dedicated training sessions that will be led by the German Police University, the National Forensics Institute, and in Slovakia, and by ourselves in UL. So those trainings will happen from October to January in the coming months. So again, please keep in touch, and please feel free to email us and ask us what's happening next. So next, I would like to introduce our speakers, Mario Pellegrino and Mick Henry. So Mario Pellegrino is from Europol, and he's a Lieutenant Colonel in the Italian Carabinieri, and since April 2020 has been assigned as a specialist to Europol in the analysis of Project Crime, where he supports and coordinates enforcement actions concerning waste and pollution related crimes. His first deployment was to the south of Italy, where he spent a few years in the fight against organised crime groups. After he worked for a total of 3 years in Bosnia-Herzegovina, Afghanistan, Israel, the Gaza Strip, and Tunisia. In 2018, he was appointed as responsible for the Carabinieri Environmental Crime Investigation Unit in the central region of Italy. Dr. Mick Henry is a regional manager for the Environmental Protection Agency and is an enforcement manager for the West Northwest District in the Office of Environmental Enforcement. Mick holds a BSc from the National University of Galway. His PhD was on anaerobic digestion and wastewater treatment. So Mick will know a lot about sludge and movement of sludge and the problems that can create. Since 1996, Mick has worked for the Environmental Protection Agency, and his current role involves managing the enforcement and regulation of the Environmental Protection Agency licensed facilities in the northwest of Ireland, and this covers 5 counties. Mick is going to speak to us about the challenges that the Inspectorate Division overcame as a result of COVID-19 and the novel ways that his team engaged technology, remote working, and new ways of conducting inspections over the past few months. So with that, I'm going to hand over presenting to Mario, and thank you, Mario, for agreeing to speak with us today. I'm just going to go to my Zoom here and my settings and see how I can get out of this. Okay, that doesn't go. Okay, stop sharing. Perfect. Okay, so I can hand over to you. I think Guillaume is going to control your slides. Is that right, Mario?
Thank you, Yvonne. Thank you for the floor. Good morning to everybody. It is a pleasure to be here today and have the opportunity to share our in this activity and to give you our insights after the operation was concluded. So I don't know if you can help me with sharing the screen with the presentation. Can you hear me?
Yeah, sure.
Yes.
Sure, Mario. Guillaume has your presentation. So.
Do you want me to show your presentation?
Yes, thank you. Yes.
Just a second. Can you see it?
Yes, yes. This is I mean, thank you for the introduction, Ion. I mean, this is just I will be very quick with this presentation. There are a few slides, but I will go through them very briefly. Short background, why we decided to go for this operation. the different phases of the operation and what we are doing right now, and which our achievement were during this operation. So next, please. Next. Europol is the law enforcement agency the European Agency for Law Enforcement Cooperation. There are lots of tasks you can see. The most relevant role is to be considered as we are the information hub for EU member states. And among our tasks, one of the most relevant is also to support member states in investigations when these investigations involve 2 or more member states or third parties. And one of the tasks is also, as you see highlighted, is to coordinate, organize, and implement investigative and operational actions. So to coordinate was, our aim in this operation. It's I want to highlight because next, please. Not before. Yes, this one. We are quite a young project within Europol. It's just 4 years that we've been created as an analysis project. So it's the first time also that we are going to we have a coordinated operation as our own initiative. So this is very important to highlight, as this is a quite young project, but we are also going into the direction to coordinate and launch investigations in this important field, environmental field. Next, please. So, which is the background of the operation? We were, as Europol, we were trying to identify the main risks as a consequence of the pandemic. We identified many risks, many threats concerning fraud, but we also identified this threat of sanitary waste. There was an increase in sanitary waste, so our main concern was how this sanitary waste is going to be managed throughout Europe, but not only, as we are going to see later on. Next, please. So we are going to see the 2 phases, the main pre-operation and intelligence phase. Next, please. And in this case, you can see that there is this research, in which each estimated infected person was producing per day 3.4 kilograms of sanitary waste. So this was a good indicator that something was going on, and we had a threat to face in the future. We were now in March in this period, so it was quite at the early stage of the pandemic. So we decided to have an exchange of information with all our partners, and we also went after this exchange of information. We went also for a concept note and a risk analysis behavior document, and we are going to see it later. And also, in order to raise awareness, we also published several OSINT reports that we disseminated among our partners. Next, please. Here you see the partners we discussed with. We have a quite heterogeneous say partners. We go from European Commission to networks like Pacto and BCrimeNet, but also with the agencies like Interpol and also with Impel, of course. And if you see also the commissioner of the, MVCrime commissioner, it was quite concerned on how this waste management was going to be carried out. So this was another indicator for us to go for this operation. Next, please. And we can see here the timeline. You can see that the pre-operational phase was quite in the beginning of the pandemic. We had this intelligence phase, and we started immediately in June with the operational phase. you can see the key concept are flexibility and national needs. That was very important as well. I mean, we are here to coordinate, but we don't want to be we don't want to create any issues to the member states. And this was the situation. If you remember, last year in June, there was also problems among the law enforcement agencies for concern related to the spread of the infections, but also our aim was not to create any issues to the sanitary health center that were managing the crisis, the health crisis. So it was on the basis of what law enforcement agencies at the national level thought it was the best way to proceed. So both in terms of what to do and when to do it, we gave them guidelines, but after that, it was on their hands how to proceed. Next, please. And there was a quite good response from member states. If you can see, there were lots of countries that joined the operation. Also Interpol, Frontex, and Europol, and lots of countries also from other parts of the world, like Africa, also Asia and America, and that was good also for them, as the pandemic in the beginning it was not so spread in those areas, but they could take advantage of our experience to launch their activities when the pandemic became it became larger, and the consequences were clear all over the world. Next, please. And this is our risk analysis behavior. We have different analysis behavior, from the individual behaviors to the management of the waste, and up to the possible penetration of mafia-style groups in this management cycle. And we are going to see it. Next, please. Yes, from the raise awareness point of view, it was very important to publish this OSINT report, because this was also to raise awareness among law enforcement agencies about the threat that we were going to face. We had two different reports, as you can see on the right. One concerning sanitary waste and COVID-19, and so our operation, and another one concerning the consequences of COVID-19 from a more general perspective. And in this also we had a very good coordination with Interpol. Next, please. From an individual behaviors perspective, it was quite clear that there was a large use of face masks and gloves, and this created problems in the management of on what the individual were doing, and you can see the consequences in these pictures. This is a minor issue according to if compared to the other one, but still it was an issue. Next, please. But what we focus more, our core business is to conduct, is to support the investigations conducted by member states. So if you can see here in the picture, these are all activities where we were coordinating together with the law enforcement agencies at the national level. Yeah, you can see there is an overload of sanitary waste, and there were different ways managing companies who are dealing with it, and in some cases we had also this kind of activities that you can illicit storage or illicit management or illicit dumping. Next, please. And as I told you, just said, there was also this risk from a mafia-style group because they could offer a swift solution in a crisis time. But we, fortunately, up to now, we don't have any clue that this happened. So it's very important. We have other feedback, but not this one. And it's something we are happy that our risk analysis was not coherent with what happened next. Next. And this is the operational plan objectives. As I said, raise awareness is what was one of our most important objectives in order also to prevent the spread of the infections. But from an operational point of view, we want to combat the negligent gathering, transporting, management, and disposal of the sanitary waste. What we felt as something important to do, it was to give a common approach to the law enforcement agencies involved, so to give a common guideline for the next operational steps. So we had several meetings with them, and we also give them, a clear view on how to approach these activities. Next. So we started the operation in June 2020. We had only 6.2 million people infected at the time, and we know that after there was an increase in numbers, but that was the situation there. And if you consider that 3.4 kilograms per person, infected person, you can imagine how much it was the increase in sanitary waste produced all over the world. Next, please. And these are the final results. We gave them as guideline to conduct inspections and also to collect intelligence, but also to launch investigations. This led to 280,000, about 280,000 inspections in different ways. Road inspections, but also plant inspections, and these were the main two, but also at transnational shipment inspection. So it was also from this point of view. So we had different kind of inspections that led to more than 800 administrative sanctions, 22 seizures of waste, and most important was more than 100 people arrested in few activities that led to these arrests, and all of them regarded the illicit way to manage the waste. I will give you an example. We had one operation in Spain, Operation Ribio, in which these people, the suspects were managing a lot of sanitary waste, and because it was too much, they were not treating it properly, so it was not completely sterilized, and it was then considered as sterilized, but it was not the case. So it was there was still the risk of the spread of infections after that. So it was this was one of the most important, led to 20 arrests, for instance. And also I would like to highlight on the right the Siena messages that we got. There were almost 400 Siena messages with 54 contributions. And when I say contributions, it means that we have operational data in it. That's very important. It's our channel for secure communication, and the member states contributed to participant countries contributed to this, and it's very important for Europol. As I told you in the beginning, we are an information hub, and this information is very important and useful for other ongoing investigations and future investigations, as this information can trigger some connection with the investigation at transnational level. So it's very important. We also collected information during this operation. Next, please. The modus operandi that we identified, illicit storage was of course one. Illegal transboundary movements. We had a few. It was like 4 cases of transboundary movements detected that were illegal. and the shipments were returned to the countries that originated this sanitary waste. And we also we had also residual waters infected. I mean, the water were not properly treated, so there was evidence of COVID, of the virus within this water. And of course, the illegal management, as I said before, it was one of the most relevant modus operandi identified. Next, please. And which our support was to the operation. From a tactical perspective, we supported on the spot during the arrests the law enforcement agencies with our services. I will not go through all of it. From an operational point of view, as I said, coordination was our main aim, and our first time, let's say, that we are doing this on this field. And we also had the operational analysis, operational meetings, the use of our channel for communication, Siena and OSINT report. And from a strategic perspective, we had an early warning notification. It means that we informed countries about something that was going to happen on the basis of the information that we had. And also we had a good liaison with all agencies and networks, and a press release in order to also give more visibility to our activities. Next, please. Next. And yeah, this is our Siena string is still open, and we want to go, and we are receiving additional information concerning the illegal treatment of sanitary waste, and we are going to give time and space because the pandemic is not over yet, and so we are still receiving contributions, and yes, our aim is to go on with it, and to have more insight concerning this kind of modus operandi. Next, please.
To be involved in this direction.
Yeah, this is my last slide. If you have any questions, I'm available. I have to leave, so if there are any questions, if you can have this moment for questions, I'm happy to answer.
That's brilliant, Mario. Thank you so much for such an interesting and informative presentation. Operation Retrovirus looks to be so effective, especially in the level of enforcement that you achieved, and the prevention of waste crime is really impressive. So yeah, I will open it up to the floor. If anyone has any questions, please put them in the chat, or unmute yourself and ask a question. We're open to that. So Victoria has just said here in the chat, great presentation, and thank you, Mario. Mario,
yes, Victoria here.
Great, Victoria.
Very much. Impressive results with the retrovirus, and indeed very, very nice to see that the young project as the one that started with the environmental crime analysis in 2017 already had that wide outreach to so many countries. I'm asking whether at the moment, because Strike looks at different problematic waste streams, do you see at the moment the need to focus on other problematic waste streams in particular, and of course whether it's plastics, or whether you see a trend that the enforcement community, I don't know if you can share this information, but of course in general, if the enforcement community and customs should particularly be wary on any other type of waste stream that seems to be passing through borders illegally, increasingly at the moment.
Thank you, Victoria. Thank you for your words, and it's nice to see you again. Yeah, I mean, we are now facing some increasing issues in the management of urban waste, and including plastic, and this is something a very huge problem, because we had in the past, I think everybody knows this China ban on plastics, and after that we had other countries that replaced China in the management, but these countries are not anymore available for that, let's say like this. And so we are experiencing a very swift changes in the routes that are that the criminal networks are using in order to manage this kind of waste, and Europe and intra-European routes are becoming a more and more serious issue, because it's becoming maybe the last way to avoid excessive costs at national level. So yeah, we are seeing this as a main threat, and from this perspective, but also on the other side, also from the e-waste, when it comes to, for instance, I will give you an example: solar panels. Solar panels are being dismantled for the first time after they were installed, and this becomes also a threat for the future, and they are sent to African countries as second-hand products. So this is also an emerging threat. We know that e-waste is sent to African countries as an illicit way to proceed with this, but we experience now also issues with these renewable devices, renewable energy devices that are going to be treated not properly from a waste perspective.
Fascinating, Marius. We're getting into electronic waste as well. I just want to tell you that there's so many messages of thanks in the chat, but there's also a question. So I'm just going to read this out quickly. So this question is from Mohammed Salim. How can we define as clinical waste due to the mobility of the virus? It may vary from 5 to 9 days. Sometimes when a shipment has arrived to a country, it might take more than 10 days. In that situation, it could be a clinical waste at the time of export, but we may find it difficult to prove that at the time of importation.
Yeah, I mean, we consider that the waste should be treated at a national level first. We need to have this treatment at a national level before it is exported. That's what we experienced in our case. But the treatment was not done at the national level, but it was all illegal, basically. So it's not, according to me, for what was done on the basis of this, but it was just dealt without any kind of, without paying attention at all at the rules foreseen.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Mario, for your fantastic presentation and your time in answering all these questions. And yeah, thanks again, and have a lovely rest of the day.
Thank you, Yvonne. See you
Take
soon.
care.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you to everybody.
Bye. So our next speaker is Dr. Mick Henry from the Irish Environmental Protection Agency. So Mick, if you can start sharing your presentation, that would be great. Fantastic. We can see your presentation now.
That's great. Thanks very much, Yvonne. And it's a pleasure to be here today to share our experiences like Mario there. What I'm going to talk to you about today really is very briefly a summary of how we coped with continuing to enforce our sites during the pandemic, and one way in particular, whatever. So Okay, as we all know, the world was thrown into turmoil in mid-March. So how did we cope? Okay, so the work of the EPA was deemed to be an essential service. Okay, in other words, the essential work of the EPA was expected to continue. But how did we carry out that? Was there a need to go on site? How did we actually go on site when we needed to? All of those sort of questions were asked, and we had to provide answers. Okay. And in particular, we had to come up with the tools that the EPA needed to continue enforcement of the regulated communities. So how we did that, and one of the approaches that we identified was remote compliance assessments. There were a number of others. For example, for our very high risk industrial sites, we got access to their continuous monitoring systems for emissions to air and got that data to be reported to us, whatever. And that provided us with a good insight in relation to what was happening on the ground, real-time data on sites. So we looked at approximately 30 high-risk air industrial sites that we needed to focus in on, and some of them did highlight problems, whatever, and one of them in particular resulted in legal action, whatever. But for today, I'm just going to talk to you about the remote compliance assessments and how we went about that. So as I said, we needed to continue the compliance checks while adhering to public health restrictions. So we needed to come up with an innovative way of doing that. Could we do it remotely? How would it work? How would licensees react to it when we said that we were going to do it, and how would it fit in with our work program? Okay, they were all questions that we had to answer, but within a space of about 4 weeks, we had trialed the remote compliance assessments, or RCAs as they're commonly known internally here, and had them up and running, whatever. So I suppose it was a tight time frame, whatever, but the systems that we had allowed us to do that, whatever. So what they are there, I suppose, an innovative tool, whatever. We use them to actually assess compliance primarily at low risk sites. Okay, we have all our sites, approximately 830 of them, screened in terms of the risk to the environment there, or whatever. So the high risk, low risk, and medium risk, whatever. These remote compliance assessments are typically used for low risk sites, but we have used them on occasion on the other sites, whatever. And they're mainly used to gather intelligence, whatever. So they have to be dynamic in that way, and that the sectors we deal with vary from very simple operations using high quantity solvents to very large multinational operations, and they had to be able to be used across all of those sectors, whatever. So we had to amend our procedures to incorporate the RCAs, okay, and included in that is how they would withstand legal action, whatever. We had to develop guidance and training for the inspectors. We also had to develop guidance for the licensees, whatever, and it's important that they knew that these are one of the tools that we were going to use in the pandemic. The RCAs had to be compatible with CRM, whatever. In 2013, we moved from a paper-based system to CRM, whatever, and that has brought huge gains and efficiencies in the way we work, whatever. So, for example, each year we would have received about 10,000 different pieces of documentation in hard copy form, whatever, and at the push of a button, then we went to electronic, whatever. And the CRM is the means by which we use and talk to our licensees, and they talk to us all electronically. So it had to be compatible with that. We tested it, we road tested it with the licensees in terms of we picked a few different sectors and piloted, and then we mail shotted all licensees to tell them that this was one of the ways we were going to actually carry out compliance checks during the pandemic. So as I said, in 2013, we moved to CRM, whatever, so it ticked the box there, whatever. We used MS Teams to actually do the RCAs, and MS Teams is one of the most popular ways that we talk to licensees and talk to ourselves internally here, whatever. So we felt that it could be used to do this as opposed to say Zoom, whatever. And most importantly, the RCAs complied with the IED requirements, and that allowed us to actually continue the inspections during the pandemic and complying with IED, whatever. So the two guides that we use, I suppose one was for the inspectors and actually how to carry them out. So we fairly intensively and quickly got inspectors trained up, and it got the guidance rolled out to them and allowed them to actually do the RCAs once they had that done. Likewise, we got guidance for licensees. We met the representative bodies for the licensees, whatever, and told them this is one of the ways we were going to do it. And generally, it was received fairly well by the license community in relation to as an emergency tool to be used during the pandemic. So in summary, whatever, and this is just a summary screen here, whatever, advanced preparation. Okay, it takes about 2 hours to prepare for an RCA, whatever, between getting up to date on the file, whatever. We announce it to licensees. Okay, so you might say, well, it's an announced visit, but you have to remember, I suppose, these are mainly low risk sites, whatever, and we would typically announce it the evening before we do the RCA, whatever. So we would drop them a line saying, here, look, we're going to do an RCA the following morning, whatever. Here's the link, whatever. And we've also used phone calls as a means of doing these RCAs, whatever, where we would ask licensees to get teams up on their phones and to do a walk around of their site and to walk to specific areas that we would need to look at. So again, it was by photo and also by mobile phones and live video. So that was good, and it meant that licensees would have to share their screens with us to review documents, review different parts of their site in relation to, say, is their composite sampler working, where their waste storage is, all that sort of stuff. So, and fairly quickly afterwards, we have a time frame, an internal time frame of 4 weeks to actually get our report back out to licensees, and that was completed in all cases, and it was issued as normal through our CRM communication tool. So here are some examples, I suppose, of what we looked at, again, mainly for records, whatever, but also we looked at, say, some cone tests being done in the lab, walk around, say, their waste storage area. This is a waste transfer storage site, whatever. It allowed us to interrogate their results, where they share their daily or their continuous results with us, and it was allowed us to pick out, I suppose, anomalies or non-compliant results, or results that we felt that needed more attention. And things like this, I suppose, just storage areas, whatever. So I suppose in summary, we found them a very useful tool. We can carry out meetings in this way too. So Teams, as you know, is very beneficial in that regard, and that not only can we do these RCAs, but we also can do meetings. It saves travel time, I suppose. The site of issues can be checked in this way. I suppose, as I said at the outset, it's mainly used for gathering intelligence. So we may say, yeah, once we've had a look at certain things on a site or at certain records, then we might say, yeah, that needs to be scaled up for a full visit to the site, or to another check in whatever way it is. And I suppose just there at the bottom, site visits are still required, but we found that using these RCAs, they don't have to be as lengthy, I suppose, and because the pandemic is still with us, we've used, I suppose, them in combination, the RCAs in combination with the site visits. And in that regard, it allows us to balance, well, what sites do we actually need to go to? What sites can we get by with an RCA with, or both, whatever. So, and we've identified ways of, in the future, when the pandemic ends, I suppose, of using these RCAs, for example, to look at EMSs, environmental management systems, and different parts of EMSs, whatever. And we're looking at other ways of the RCAs being used in future. So I suppose in summary, how did the EPA's regulated community do in 2020? I suppose some of the challenges here on the right hand side, I suppose the challenges obviously were site inspections and carrying them out. Complaint investigation resolution became an issue because more people were at home and probably we weren't out on the ground as much. Emission monitoring, okay, how do we cope with emission monitoring? Very early in the pandemic, a lot of sites we couldn't get access to, or some of our contractors couldn't get access to. So how did we overcome that? And I mentioned there about the air emissions, about getting the real-time continuous data into us, and that allowed us to overcome that. The priority sites, okay, what did the pandemic mean for the priority sites, and what are the key environmental issues? So I suppose in summary, our work continued during the pandemic, but continued in a different way, whatever. And I suppose it required us to innovate and use different tools available to us to actually continue compliance checks. So in summary, what did we do? I suppose we carried out 1,089 inspections during the year at 468 different sites. And that was slightly down, but not much. I think it maybe 100 or so different inspections less, whatever, than previous years, whatever. We carried out over 200 of these RCAs, okay, and I suppose that reflected, I suppose, how successful they were for us in relation to carrying out the checks, whatever. As I said down here at the bottom, the RCAs, the different types. We still continued nearly 500 enforcement visits during the year. And then I suppose water and air checks and noise checks, whatever, amounted to just under 400 different types of visits. And you can see here our top 5, whatever we publish. This is obviously a published report, whatever, and you can get it on our website, whatever. And we've published our top 5 most visited sites during the year, whatever. And the bottom one there, I suppose, is in Limerick, where a site was being remediated, a former gasworks site was being remediated, and that caused a lot of problems in terms of odors and whatever, and required us to be on the ground on that site a lot during 2020. Complaints, I suppose the most common and biggest issue for us during 2020 was odor, whatever. And you can see here that it peaked in April. I suppose if you go back to the lockdown, it was in March, whatever. So April saw a lot of people at home, whatever. We didn't see the increase in the number of individual sites being complained about, but we did see an increase in the number of complainants. So a lot of people complained, and that resulted in the increase in the number of complaints we received, whatever. And that probably reflected in that most people were at home, whatever, during the pandemic, or definitely the worst part of it, and that trend resulted in an increase in odors, whatever. I suppose we use that intelligence then to visit the sites, and then obviously take whatever enforcement action we needed. Again, here, whatever the most complained about sites, whatever, the bottom one there is a food processing site in the middle of Ireland. Tipperary Co-op is a creamery milk processing one. This is the gas network, Limerick Gasworks sites, and this is a chemical site in the southern part of the country, whatever, Markmillypore. I suppose during the pandemic, we continued to highlight the sites who were worst performers in relation to enforcement. And we had 12 sites, whatever, I suppose you could say were put on our name and shame list, whatever. And here they are, and they're across different counties in Ireland, from the south to the east to the west, whatever, to the Midlands, whatever. A number of ones on the west side there. You can see there in the middle, there's 5 of the 12 sites there on the west side, and they cause just particular problems, whatever. But we find that this is a very useful tool for us to actually highlight our worst performers, whatever. And typically and generally, whatever, if a company or a licensee gets on this list, the onus and emphasis for them should be to get off this list, whatever. And in all cases, bar one, they have come off the list, whatever. And we would see that is a success, whatever. All of these sites are have been prosecuted in some form or other by us, whatever, and we'll continue to take whatever enforcement action we need in relation to sites that are on this list. So again, in summary, the challenges, I suppose, we've had fires. This is a transfer station in June, whatever, we had a fire on it. This is an algal bloom, whatever, that one of our licensed sites discharges into. And this is a site here that had particular problems on the wastewater side, whatever, that resulted in odors. So again, I said odor is the most complained about or the biggest issue for the public. Noise again, whatever, and then discharge to water, air and waste management. So that kind of gives you a brief summary in relation to 2020 and a brief overview of our remote compliance assessments. As I said, it was one of a number of tools used, but it's, I suppose, it can be used at low risk sites and can be used to gather intelligence that would focus and risk assess our inspections moving forward. So that's it for me. Happy to answer any questions, and Yvonne has my email address if anybody has any more detailed questions that they'd like to ask outside of the meeting. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Mick, for such an informative and interesting presentation. And just the scope of your work is so broad, dealing with complaints from the public and inspecting the IET licensed sites. And I guess this is where waste crime starts, is on the ground and the eyes and ears of the public. So if there's any questions for Mick, please type them in the chat, or feel free to raise your hand or speak and ask a question. I think I'd like to ask a question about the going forward, and you hinted towards it that this might become a key part of the way you work going forward. Do you think it's this system of remote assessment will help you to do even more inspections and look into other sites and how you mentioned low risk sites and high risk sites, and do you think you'll have a program of assessment for those that you might divide them out in some way? It seems to me like this is a very effective way of working and a very lean way of working.
Yeah, that's a good summary, I think, Yvonne. Whatever. Yeah, as I said, okay, we're continuing to I suppose look at the RCAs and how they can be used, whatever. And as I said, we've looked at them in terms of EMSs on sites, whatever. We have a good proportion of our sites that are fully compliant with their licenses, okay, and they may not take up as much time in relation to on-site activity as, say, some of the worst performers, whatever. So it is one of those sectors that we're trialing the use of these in relation to moving forward, and whether they can be, as I said, continue to satisfy our compliance checks, but at the same time using our resources at the sites that are most in need of it. So obviously all sites aren't compliant, and some of them are worstly off than others in terms of compliance, whatever. But I suppose we tend to continue to do the inspections at those sites. And you have to remember, I suppose, during the pandemic, for some reason or other, we couldn't get access to the sites because of COVID outbreaks or restricted access or fears for our own inspector safety. But that we overcame those in the main, whatever. But I suppose we did use these, I suppose, to fill that gap and keep an eye on some of these guys that we felt, okay, well, rather than just not talk to them, not visit them, or not hear from them, that we needed to continue to keep an eye on them. So this is one of the tools. But we feel EMS is an area, I suppose, that Okay, when you go on site and look at an environmental management system, whatever, it does take time and take a lot of time, whatever, to actually interrogate it and look at it in detail. And we feel that that time could be shortened significantly by RCAs. So it would allow us to go to that site, for example, and look at the issues that needed to be looked at rather than spending time going through documentation on the environmental management system or other documents that could be looked at by RCAs. So
Fascinating. I can see a key that you can now collaborate on your inspections as well as before. Maybe one inspector went in an inspection, now kind of multiple people can join in as well. So to me, it just seems like a really great innovation. So do we, oh, I see Catherine has her hand up. Catherine?
Yes. I'm arriving.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, I have, it was very interesting. I'm working for the Brussels Capital Region as an environmental inspector. Of course, distances in our region are very short, so travel, the travel time is less, but it is interesting, of course, when it's difficult to have access to a site. I have a specific question. If you were talking about remote access to monitoring systems, I assume, for instance, for exhaust of an incinerator or something like that, do you have continuous access or only ad hoc access? Because we are also thinking sometimes that we would like to have access on a continuous basis, but on the other hand, then you take a lot of responsibility as an environmental agency, because they might always say, but you also could have seen when there was when there were problems. So we are sometimes reluctant to have too much access to all their monitoring systems. And I have another question, but that is not really related to your remote compliance assessment system. You were showing the public reports for blame and shame. And that is also very interesting. But I assume that is provided in your legal text, or how do you do it? Because we are not allowed to publish names. And I think it's a good way, because you said these companies are doing a lot to be off the list afterwards. So how did you organize it, or how is it possible to do that? How is it provided in your laws, or to publish the names? So
okay,
that's
well,
two parts.
Yeah, thanks, Catherine. Yeah, I suppose since 2017, we've used the national priority sites as a means of highlighting our worst performers, whatever. And we've continued to do that even with sites that we have are currently being prosecuted. Okay, so it hasn't been an issue for us, whatever, in terms of prosecutions, whatever. And in some of the cases, the judges, once they've heard that a site was or has been a national priority site, they've really taken that on board in relation to, oh, the agency are very concerned about this site, whatever. And I suppose just a bit of background to how you become a priority site. We have 5 key attributes that we use to generate a score that will make you become a priority site. So whether, for example, we have an investigation open, whether it is highly ranked, the number of non-compliances that we've issued, the number of incidents on your site, the number of complaints. So they're all things that we use, and the tool that we've used has been road tested over time. So we feel that it is a good way of whatever, and has been recognized by the courts as evidence to show that this site or a site is particularly bad, whatever. On the first question, okay, in relation to access to continuous monitoring systems, I think is a very good point, whatever. In the past, on occasion, and I won't say this happened in the pandemic, but we have had access to continuous systems online on our systems. So we would dial in to a site and access their continuous monitoring systems. but we haven't used that often for the very reason that you've outlined. Okay, in other words, well, the EPA knows about it already, so we don't need to tell them, and that may come against us, okay, in relation to taking action moving forward. But during the pandemic, we got access to our 30 highest risk air sites, and you're right, it is from incinerators and thermal oxidizers mainly that we were looking at, but also some power plants and waste energy plants. And that information was submitted to us on a monthly basis. Okay, so for example, in March, you had submitted in early April all your continuous monitoring data for your TO or your incinerator, and that would give us the intelligence. Obviously, it didn't. There's nothing as good as being out on the ground, whatever, but it did provide us with some intelligence and some pointers to allow us to investigate things further when we did get back out on site.
Thank you. Can I come back on this blame and shame? Do
Yeah.
you really have a legal basis? That is actually my question, because that apparently is a difficult thing to get past our parliament, to get it, because to blame and shame in a public way, we need to have a legal basis, and this legal basis there's always in a law, and the law, if the parliament doesn't accept, or we never got it passed.
Okay.
We didn't. So I'm just asking, do you do it because it's accepted, or do you do it because, or can you do it because you have a legal basis?
Well, I suppose for us, the legal basis is the legislation in terms of compliance or not with the legislation, whatever, and that is to our forefront. So when we bring any legal cases, it is in relation to compliance with the permit. So they're either compliant or non-compliant. The issue about whether the site is a national priority site or on a name and shame list usually may come up in evidence, whatever given by us, if needs be. And it hasn't been challenged to date, so we feel that, but it has been heard in court, and whatever, and the court so far has no issues with it.
Okay, thank you. A very interesting presentation, by the way. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Catherine. So just to wrap up and close today's webinar. So just want to thank Mario and Nick for what I'm sure you'd agree were fascinating insights into their day-to-day work. All of the recordings will be distributed through the mailing list for those people who subscribed to attend the webinar today. I'd just like to draw your attention to the Strike Project website, and that's where you'll get the most up-to-date information about the project, the upcoming webinars and the upcoming trainings. So with that, I'd like to thank everybody for attending again. Thanks for your attention. Thanks for your questions and your comments. Take care, have a lovely day, and we'll see you in the future. Bye.